friends, welcome back. I'm Mrs. Fithian and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Hebron Elementary. I am so glad that you're back for our final week of math adventures. Now you know from the last 3 weeks that before we get started with our math learning, I like to do some sort of breathing exercise to really get calm and focused and ready to learn. So the first week we went through some hot cocoa breathing where we were breathing in our hot cocoa and cooling it down. And then the second week we did dandelion breathing where we were imagining the seeds of the dandelion blowing away. Last week, we did bird breathing where we actually put some movements in with our breathing. And today, we're going to go back to one of my very favorites that we have not done yet, but you might know. This is called starfish breathing. All you need for starfish breathing are your hands. So we're going to take one hand, and I like to call him Mr. Starfish, and we are going to hold him out, and as we trace his arms, or our fingers, we're going to take a deep breath in, pause at the top of each finger, and then exhale as we go down. All right, so it will look like this. Pause, and out. And as we do that, remember that we're trying to take a deep breath where we're pushing out our belly and not just breathing from our chest. All right, so we'll have 5 breaths together and I'll try to remind you. All right, so here we go. Take the finger of one hand and trace on starfish. Here we go. Breathe in, pause, and out. Breathe in, pause, out. Breathe in, pause, and out. In, pause, out. And last one, breathe in, pause, and out. Very good. So you can do that at home anytime you need to because you always have your hand. All right, so now that we're calm and ready to go, we're going to really wrap up what we've been learning this week about place value. So we've been talking about numbers have certain value or mean different things depending on where they are in a number. For example, the number 1 means something different than when we see a 1 in the number 13. So we're going to practice that a little bit today. But before we do that, let's talk about what we did last week. So last week we were practicing grabbing or isolating a group of 10. We started with some scattered counters, then we practiced circling them to find that group of 10, and then we moved on to using counters in a 10 frame, or cubes and sticks or rods, depending on what you wanted to call them. We were doing that because it was helping us find our teen numbers. We learned through a kindergarten channel with Harry Kindergarten's YouTube channel that we could grab a group of 10 and add some extra ones and create a teen number. In this example that we did in the last few lessons, we were looking at 12. We knew that the 1 meant that we had one group of 10, depending on which picture we used, and that the 2 stood for the 2 extra ones, which were either cubes or counters in any of the scenarios. It didn't matter which way we did it, we still had 12. So today, we're going to look at what we did in the last lesson. We spent a lot of time last week looking at taking a group of 10, adding some extra ones, and creating a teen number. Let's look at this one, for example. We said that a group of 10 and 3 extra ones is 13. We were sort of building up to making an addition sentence. Now today we're going to spend some more time, not as much as we did before creating this, but we're actually going to flip it and we're going to decompose or break apart our teen numbers. This time, we're going to start with the teen number and see how can we break it apart and use that group of 10 that's incredibly helpful and see the extra ones. All right? Now, before we really jump in and start practicing and get into our packet, let's take a look at Harry Kindergarten's other video about the teen numbers and see what else we notice.
Seriously now, folks, I'm tired of kids mixing up their teens. Every teen starts with a 1, even 11 and 12. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1. 11 is a 1 and a 1. 12 is a 1 and a 2. 13 is a 1 and a 3. 14 is a 1 and a 4. 15 is a 1 and a 5. 16 is a 1 and a 6. 17 is a 1 and a 7. 18 is a 1 and an 8. 19 is a 1 and a 9. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1. 11 is a 1 and a 1. 12 is a 1 and a 2. 13 is a 1 and a 3. 14 is a 1 and a 4. 15 is a 1 and a 5. 16 is a 1 and a 6. 17 is a 1 and a 7. 18 is a 1 and an 8. 19 is a 1 and a 9. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1. Come on, everybody, let's get this done. Numbers in the teens, they start with a 1.
There we go. Okay, so looking at or listening to that video, what did we notice and what do you notice about numbers in the teens? That's right, they all start with a 1. Okay, now let's take a minute and look at these teen numbers, and I'm just using 11 through 19, and think about what does that 1 really mean? Let's use the first video that we learned from Harry Kindergarten last week, and we said that the number 1 stood for something, and all of our teen numbers have something. So what was that? Yeah, I think I heard someone say it. The 1 stands for 1 group of 10. So we know that, for example, here with our 12, this 1 stood for 1 group of 10. Now, remember the blocks that we used. I told you that in school you might have Unifix cubes or Snap cubes, but I didn't have those with me, so I just used these blocks from home. So in this group of 10, I know that there are actually, in this group of 10, there are 10 little ones hiding in here. So let's count them before we can trust that that's true. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So then when we look at the rest of our teen numbers, we know that that 1 is going to give us the visual representation of a group of 10. And then the second number in the 1's place, those extra ones, make up the rest of the teen number. So let's see what that looks like. Let's decompose the number 15 today. Number right in the middle of our number line. Last week we learned from Brain Pop Jr. with Annie and Moby the robot that numbers can have more than 1 digit. We learned that the number 15 has 2 digits, 1 and 5. The 1 we practiced was standing for that group of 1, 10. So I can show that here. The 1 is 1 group of 10. And today I'm choosing 10 frames and counters, but we'll switch it up here in just a bit. And then the 5 stands for 5 extra 1s. Now we can take this a step further and really push our thinking and see how this could form an equation or a number sentence. I still have that 1 is a group of 10. The 5 stands for my 5 extra 1s, but this time I've added in my equal sign and my plus sign. So now I could read 15 is 10 plus 5. All right? Now, before we look at another number, I want to show you how we're really going to push our thinking today, because we spent a little bit of time doing this the other way, composing them, putting them together. But I want to show you how we're going to eventually transition into just using the numbers and not the picture. All right, so the 1 I knew meant the 1 group of 10. So I'm actually going to put 10 above here because there are actually 10 little counters inside that frame. And then the 5 stands for these 5 1s, so I would put a 5 here. Eventually, we're going to get rid of this part and just look at the numbers. 15 is 10 plus 5. Okay, so we're slowly going to get there, but that's just a preview. Let's take a look at another example that we can decompose. All right, 19. I'm going to try to stick with the same colors. So we know that this 1 stands for, right, 1 group of 10. So that's going to come down here. And I'm just going to draw a couple circles for my counters. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we know that we need all 10 dots because that's what makes our group of 10. Now let's switch over to blue to follow this pattern. And the 9 stands for what? 9 1s. Even though this is in a 10 frame, it doesn't count as a group of 10 unless they're all filled in. And for this one, we only need 9. So this would read 11 is a group of 10 and 9 ones. Okay? And let's take a look at one more. And then in just a moment, I'm going to show you something. We're going to cheat a little bit today. I'm going to take you to a number past 20. Now, I know that for the past several lessons, you've heard me say kindergarten really focuses on 0 to 20. And when we're talking about our teen numbers, we're really focusing on 11 to 19. But I'm going to do an activity with you that my son, he's a kindergartner, really enjoys. And so hang with me because in just a minute, we're going to check that out. So let's look at this one. I always think 11 is a very tricky number when we're talking about place value because it has 2 ones as the digits. But remember, this one means something completely different than this one. The first one is in the tens place, which means it stands for one group of 10. So let's go ahead and fill this in. We have our 10 dots inside our 10 frame. Whoops. Maybe. All right, and then the second one stands for our ones, and that is just one left over. I want to give you one more visual for this. In the number 11, I'm going to put these here on the table. In the number 11, the first one stands for one group of 10. Remember, there are 10 inside of here, one group of 10. And the second one stands for one cube, or one counter, depending on how we're doing this, left over. So this represents 11, just like the number and just like the dots. Okay? Now, let's do a quick check before I show you our secret number for today. All right, get out your packet and you'll notice that I am on page 15 under day 7. So our directions say, decompose the numbers below using the 10 frames. So we're going to do just what we practiced on the board, but this time you're going to do it with me. So I'm going to get my pen ready. You make sure you have a pencil or something to write with. And I'm going to keep the same colors we were using before, just as a little bit of help visually, but you will just use one color at home. All right, so the number 13, I see 2 digits. I want to start with the tens place. What does this 1 tell us? One group of 10. So over here, I'm going to fill this in with my 10 dots, or my 10 counters, to show that I have one full group of 10. What about the digit, the 3? This is in the ones place, and this tells me how many counters I'm going to have in the second frame. So over here, 1, 2, 3. So when I look at this, I could say 13 is made up of a group of 10 and 3 ones. Okay, let's give you a second to try the bottom one. All right, so take a minute. This is 19. Think about what this might look like, and you can go ahead and write it on your paper to fill in these 2 10 frames to decompose or break apart that number. Take just a few seconds. Okay, so what did you have for the first part? The 1 tells us we have one group of 10, and to show that, we need to fill in that 10 frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 9 tells us how many ones we have left over. So we would put those 9 dots in this 10 frame. 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, you have, I think, one more on that page, but hold off. I'm going to have you use that for some at-home practice or to push your thinking a little later on. But for right now, we're going to pause in the packet. And let's go back to what I told you we were going to do here. Now, right before we did the quick check, we were decomposing 11. We were using counters and 10 frames, which we know is one way that we can look at numbers. But I'm really wondering, what if I really prefer to use the blocks or rods and cubes? Can I do that if I'm decomposing? I know I could do it when I was putting them together, but can I still use something different when I'm taking them apart? What do you think? Absolutely we can. All right, so let's take a look here. If I wanted to decompose that same number, and we've done this one a few times, so you should be a pro, and I wanted to decompose 11 into a group of 10 and a group of 1s using using units or rods and cubes, what would that look like? Now, I'm going to keep these colors for just a moment. I know that the 1 is my 1 group of 10. Instead of drawing a 10 frame, I'm going to actually draw kind of a rectangle, and that represents my 1 group of 10, just like this. All right? I'm not going to sit here and draw all the little lines, in between, because then I have to go back and spend time counting. So this is one way. In just a minute, I'll show you fast 10s and fast 1s, and that might be something you prefer. Now over here, let's switch colors. We know that the second one means 1 single block to show, or 1 single unit to show 1. And for that, I'm just going to draw a little box or cube. Now, sometimes I can get pretty picky because this isn't very straight. Sometimes that ends up looking more like a blob than a box. So let me show you fast 10s and fast 1s. You could instead decide to say, okay, 11, here's my 1 group of 10, and this is to represent this stick or this rod, and a dot is a 1. And that's fine. If that's easier for you as we're drawing these, that's totally fine. I just want you to be careful that this doesn't confuse you as looking like a number 1. Okay? So if you hear me say fast 10s and fast 1s, that's what this means. If you'd rather draw the actual rectangle and square, you can do that too. Okay? So there's lots of different ways. It gives us the same result every time. Okay, so let's take a look at a different one. What about 17? I am going to stick with my rectangles and squares for this. So 1 group of 10, we know that that looks like this. We're getting pretty good at these, and you should be noticing that we're doing the same thing every time for those teen numbers with 1 group of 10 or 1 rod or 1 10 frame. And the number 7, how many cubes would I have? How many little blocks would I have in that drawing? That's right, 7. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you wanted to show this with fast 10s and fast 1s, that would look like 1 for 1 group of 10 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for our 7. And those dots can be in any arrangement. Okay? All right. I think I've got one more here. Oh, I don't. We're going to go to our quick check. Okay, so hop back in your packet. You'll have to turn the page. We are on page 16 this time. And now we're going to decompose these numbers using the rods and 10s. Now, you can draw the rectangle and the square, or if you want to use those fast 10s and fast 1s, that's up to you. Let's do the first one together, and then I'll give you a second to do the second one on your own. All right, so 14. Let's start with the 1. Maybe. Let's start with this 1. That stands for 1 group of 10, so you can draw a rectangle just like that. That stands for 1 group. And then the 4 stands for our 4 1s left over, which I like to draw as little squares. Now I'll go ahead and put this on here in case you chose this. If you chose fast 10s, this would be 1, and fast 1s, 1, 2, 3, 4. So either of those would be fine. Now I'll get this cleaned up and start 18. You take a second and go ahead and draw this either using your rectangles and squares or your fast 10s and fast 1s. How can we decompose 18? All right, very good. So 18 is still 1 group of 10. That's what this 1 stands for. And I know most of you already have this done. This would be 8 little squares to show 8 1s. Again, if you chose fast 10s and fast 1s, it would look like that. Now, I told you all these different methods do the same thing. I'm going to show you this surprise number and tell you why I prefer to do this or even fast 10s and fast 1s. Let's take a look. All right. So this is a secret because we're supposed to stay within 0 to 20, but I'm really going to push us forward a little bit today because, again, this is something that my child and I love to do at home. We really like to think, okay, if this is something I can do with a small number in kindergarten, is there a way to do it with a larger number? So I had my son help me pick out a really large number that he thought you guys might like. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to decompose 94. That's way past 20, but it's our secret, okay? So here we go. Let's decompose 94. What would that look like using what we know about place value and tens and ones? So think for just a second, and I'll get my pen ready. All right. The 9. What does this 9 stand for? How many groups of 10 do you think we need to draw? 9. Okay. Now just think, if we were doing our 10 frames, think of how many we would have to draw. That's just 1. And I'd have to do that 9 times. So 10 frames are great. Counters are great. And I'm actually going to show you a way to do this at home on paper. But when we get into some of these larger numbers, I actually like to use the rectangles and the cubes, or the squares. So 9 groups of 10. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's my 9 groups of 10. It's a lot more fun when we get past the teen numbers, right? Now, what about this 4? This 4 stands for 4 extra 1s, or the little cubes. So I'm just going to draw 4 squares. Okay? That's how we would decompose a much larger number. Pretty much the same, but kind of a lot more fun because we get to do all the different drawings. Now, if you wanted to see that in fast 10s and fast 1s, I will show you. 94 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 1, 2, 3, 4. We could also take this into learning about tally marks and crossing at the 5, but we'll save that for another grade, okay? Now, let's take a look at what you can do at home. We're not quite done yet, but I want to show you a couple more things that we can do. Whoops, forget that block, at home. Okay, so we have 2 websites here, fuelthebrain.com and starfall.com, that if you take a moment, or if your parent or guardian takes a minute and captures the screen, you can see these games. But you can also search both of those sites for some awesome math games. These 2 games specifically I have up here, the Candy Machine and the Math Match, are specifically for composing and decomposing those teen numbers. So they're perfect for kindergarten. We also have all the pieces that I had last time I brought back. So I have my blocks, I have my cereal and pipe cleaners, I have the beads on a pipe cleaner, and we also talked about pennies and dimes. I didn't bring those today. I probably spent them. But I also have here make your own frames. So we learned how to make a number line using paper and the cards that were in the back of your packet. But I really wanted to play a game where I could build using anything I had at home using a 10 frame. So I just took a giant piece of paper that I had at home and some colored tape, which you could use markers, you could use whatever you wanted, and I made 2 10 frames. All right. Now with these 10 frames, I thought this would be fun for you to practice putting objects in the frame, but how could we also make this a game? So if you used those number cards you cut out of the back of the packet, or I didn't have those, so I just picked an index card and wrote my teen numbers, I want to decompose this number, 13. So I'm going to look and see, okay, 13 is what? How many groups of 10? 1. Now, my kids helped me paint these rocks, so I brought those today because that's just something different to show you that we can use whatever we have. And I'm going to put 10 rocks here. And how many would I need in the second frame? 3 for 3 1s. 1, 2, 3. So this is just a fun way that you can practice decomposing or even flipping it around and composing different numbers using an at-home 10 frame. Okay? So we have that option as well. Lastly, if you look back at the screen, we have our packet practice. There are only a few examples left in your packet for decomposing numbers. In my opinion, decomposing, taking those numbers apart, is a lot easier than learning how to compose them and put them together. So there's only a few here. That's why utilizing these games or any of these pieces at home would be great practice for you to play. Get the numbers, get the flashcards, flip those, and then see how you can build and make your own. All right? Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see you tomorrow for our very last lesson as we continue to decompose numbers and see how can we put everything we've learned together. Parents, don't forget that today's code word is CASTLE, C-A-S-T-L-E. All right, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.